Stop. Before you spend another dollar at the garden center this spring, you need to watch this. Because right now, as May opens up across the United States, most gardeners are about to make the same expensive mistake they made last year and the year before that. They are going to buy annuals. Pretty little annuals that fill the cart, light up the patio, and then quietly die by October, taking every dollar they cost right along with them. And next May, they do it all over again. Here is what the gardeners with the most beautiful yards in your neighborhood already know. They planted perennials, not just any perennials or fast-spreading perennials. Plants that go in the ground once, take root, and spend the next decade expanding and multiplying, turning bare soil into something that makes people slow their cars down to look. Today we are covering 11 of the very best to plant this May, chosen for U.S. gardeners, researched for every hardiness zone, and ranked to keep your landscape lush from spring through the first frost. Stay to the end because 3 bonus plants are coming, including the one plant that just won the 2025 Plant of the Year award. Most gardeners have never even heard of it. That reveal is worth sticking around for. May is not just warm enough to plant. It is the single best window of the year to establish spreaders. The soil has finally caught up with the air temperature. Frost is behind you in nearly every U.S. zone, and you have the entire growing season ahead, meaning any perennial planted now has 5 full months to dig deep, push out runners, and get established before winter arrives. Plant in June and you are racing the heat. Plant in September and you are racing the frost. May is gardening's sweet spot. Every plant on this list knows how to use it. Plant number 1. Creeping Phlox. Phlox subulata. Zones 3 to 9. Full sun. Spreads by stolons. Imagine walking out to your yard one morning in early May and the ground is simply on fire. Not with smoke or heat, with color. Solid sheets of pink, purple, and white cascading over rocks, spilling down slopes, tumbling along walkways like something from a botanical garden. That is creeping phlox in full bloom, and once you see it in person for the first time, you will understand why it has been a garden staple for generations. The name phlox comes from the Greek word for flame. That is not an accident. What makes creeping phlox extraordinary is not just how it looks, it is how it moves. This plant spreads by sending out long stems called stolons that creep along the soil surface, rooting as they go, forming a tightening mat that gets denser and more impressive every single year. A single plant covers 1 to 2 square feet in its first couple of seasons. Give it 3 years and that patch becomes a living carpet that weeds cannot penetrate. When it is not blooming, the foliage stays. Semi-evergreen and needle-like, it remains green through winter in most U.S. climates. Planted on slopes, along walkways, let it spill over retaining walls. Drought tolerant once established, deer resistant, completely low maintenance. One haircut after the spring bloom keeps it dense and healthy for the rest of the year. This is your landscape's opening act, and it earns a standing ovation every time. Plant number 2, Black-Eyed Susan Rudbeckia hirta. Zones 3 to 9. Full sun spreads by self-seeding and rhizomes. Black-Eyed Susan is the headliner of the American summer garden. Those bold golden yellow blooms with dark chocolate centers are practically synonymous with a U.S. summer landscape. But here is what most people miss. This plant is a spreading machine that works on 2 levels simultaneously. Underground, it slowly expands through rhizomes, pushing clumps wider each season. Above ground, it self-seeds with remarkable generosity. When those dried seed heads stand tall through fall and winter, birds work through them daily, and whatever drops to the soil becomes a new plant in spring. No effort required from you. 1 plant becomes 5. 5 become 20. 20 become a meadow. It blooms from early summer through fall, tolerates drought, poor soil, and punishing heat. Hardy across zones 3 through 9, this covers virtually the entire contiguous United States without complaint. The seed heads that remain through winter add structure and texture to a bare landscape when everything else has gone quiet. This is a plant that gives you something in every single season, and it multiplies for free while doing it. Plant number 3, Bee Balm Monarda didyma. Zones 3 to 9. Full sun to part shade. Spreads by rhizomes. Bee balm does something that almost nothing else on this list can claim. It turns your yard into a wildlife sanctuary in a single season. Plant it in May and by July you will have hummingbirds, not occasionally, regularly, Those shaggy wild blooms in red and deep pink are one of the richest nectar sources a hummingbird can find, and once they discover your bee balm, they will come back day after day with the loyalty of regulars at a favorite restaurant. Beneath the surface, it spreads aggressively through underground rhizomes. A clump that starts at 12 inches across in year 1 can reach 4 feet by year 3, and it does not slow down from there. Plant it where you want coverage, and then get out of its way. Research shows that planting bee balm alongside coneflower and black-eyed Susan can increase pollinator visits to your entire garden by up to 40%. It does not just attract wildlife to itself, it pulls pollinators into everything around it, making the whole yard more alive and more productive. There is one thing to know going in. Bee balm loves moisture. It thrives in moist, well-drained soil with good air circulation around its stems. In especially humid climates, give it enough space between plants to let air move freely. This prevents the powdery mildew that occasionally troubles the species. Choose a modern mildew-resistant variety, and you largely sidestep the problem entirely. Water at the base, not overhead, and this plant will reward you with a spectacle that draws more comments from visitors than almost anything else in a U.S. garden. Zones 3 through 9. Full sun to part shade. The wildlife energy this plant creates has to be seen to be believed. Plant number 4. Garden phlox. Phlox paniculata. Zones 4 to 8. Full sun to part shade. Spreads by self-seeding and division-creeping phlox sets the ground on fire in spring. Garden phlox does something entirely different. It rises, tall, fragrant, impossible to ignore. It grows 2 to 5 feet tall and produces enormous flower heads in shades of pink, purple, red, and lavender that bloom from midsummer through early fall. The fragrance released on a warm summer evening is genuinely stopping, sweet and dense, the kind of scent that makes you stand still in your own yard just to breathe. The Gina variety, the 2024 Perennial Plant of the Year, reaches 5 feet tall and 4 feet wide on sturdy wind-resistant stems. Modern varieties are mildew-resistant, solving the historic weakness of garden phlox in humid American climates. Deer avoid it entirely because of the strong floral scent, making it perfect for suburban landscapes under constant deer pressure. It spreads by self-seeding and clump division, giving you free plants every few years. This is the vertical anchor your summer border has been missing. Plant number 5. Catmint nepeta. Zones 3 to 8. Full sun. Spreads by self-seeding and clump expansion. There is a certain kind of plant that experienced gardeners keep returning to, not because it is flashy but because it simply never lets you down. Catmint produces long arching wands covered in lavender blue flowers from late spring into summer, creating a soft billowing effect that looks expensive and effortless at the same time. Then you cut it back by a third after the first flush, and it blooms again, 2 full flowering cycles in a single season. That is genuinely rare, and it is the primary reason catmint has become a staple in American landscape design. A single plant spreads to 4 feet wide over time, forming aromatic mounds that suppress weeds simply by crowding them out. It tolerates drought with remarkable grace, thriving on minimal water, a real advantage in the American West where water conservation matters. Deer avoid it, rabbits avoid it, but bees and butterflies are absolutely obsessed with it. Pair it with roses, black-eyed Susan, or salvia, and every combination looks professionally designed. This is the plant that makes everything around it look better by simply being there. Plant number 6. Lamb's Ear Stachys byzantina. Zones 3 to 10. Full sun to part shade. Spreads by runners. Everything on this list so far has been about flowers. Lamb's ear is about texture, and texture might be the most underrated element in any landscape design. The leaves are silver, soft, dense with fine white hairs that catch light the way nothing else in a garden does. Touch one and you understand instantly how it got its name, velvety and thick in a way that makes you keep touching it. Children are famously unable to walk past a patch without stopping to pick a leaf and feel it. It spreads by sending out above-ground runners that root wherever they touch soil, forming a widening mat of silver foliage around 12 inches tall. In dry, difficult spots where most plants struggle, rocky edges, thin soil, full afternoon sun, lamb's ear genuinely thrives. Hardy down to -25 degrees Fahrenheit, deer-resistant, drought-tolerant, and essentially pest-free. Plant it alongside deep purple salvia or hot pink coneflower, and the silver suddenly makes every other color look more vivid, more saturated, more intentional. It is the quiet player that makes the whole arrangement better. Here is the design trick that professional landscapers use but rarely share. Silver-foliaged plants like lamb's ear act as visual bridges between colors that would otherwise clash. Hot orange coneflower next to cool purple salvia? Run a ribbon of lamb's ear between them and suddenly the whole combination looks intentional, cohesive, and expensive. You're not just planting a spreader, you're planting the glue that holds your entire color scheme together. Plant number 7. Coneflower. Echinacea purpurea. Zones 3 to 9. Full sun to part shade. Spreads by self-seeding. What single plant feeds hummingbirds in summer? Butterflies from July through September, and goldfinches through fall. While its architectural seed heads add structure to the winter landscape, all while asking almost nothing from you? Coneflower. That is the answer. Native to the prairies and open woodlands of North America, Echinacea is practically designed for an American garden. The traditional variety produces bold purple blooms with raised, spiny orange cones. But here is what most people planting coneflower for the first time do not realize: modern varieties now come in orange, peach, coral, golden yellow, and cream. Colors that did not exist in the catalog 20 years ago. One plant self-seeds into 5 within 3 seasons. 5 become 15. Give it a sunny spot with good drainage and it naturalizes across your garden beds on its own schedule. Drought tolerant, deer resistant, tolerant of clay, sandy, and rocky soils, and it blooms from midsummer through fall. Few plants give this much, this reliably, this long. Plant number 8. Yarrow Achillea millefolium. Zones 3 to 9. Full sun. Spreads by rhizomes and self-seeding. Most gardeners underestimate yarrow, treating it as filler between more dramatic plants. That is a mistake because what yarrow does for a garden goes far beyond its appearance. Those flat-topped flower clusters in white, yellow, pink, and red attract ladybugs and parasitic wasps, beneficial insects that prey on aphids and whiteflies. Planting yarrow is essentially installing a natural pest control system. It does not just look beautiful, it actively makes your entire garden healthier. It spreads through rhizomes underground and self-seeding above ground, filling bare patches quickly. Cut the flowers for arrangements and they hold their color beautifully when dried, making this an indoor plant as much as an outdoor one. Here is the growing advice that surprises everyone. Do not enrich the soil. Too much fertility actually reduces flowering. Plant it in average or poor, well-drained soil and it blooms with abandon. This is one of the few plants in your garden that actively rewards neglect, and that makes it one of the smartest plants on this entire list. Yarrow also handles slopes and erosion-prone areas exceptionally well. Its rhizome system knits together loose soil and holds it in place through rain and runoff, something purely decorative ground covers rarely do. If you have a bank or a slope in your yard that has been bare and problematic for years, a row of yarrow planted along it in May will have that slope locked down, blooming and attracting beneficial insects by August. Function and beauty simultaneously from one plant. Plant number 9. Perennial salvia. Salvia. Zones 4 to 10. Full sun. Spreads by self-seeding and clump expansion. There is something deeply satisfying about a plant that blooms from late spring through summer while being completely ignored by every deer in the neighborhood. Perennial salvia sends up spikes of violet-blue flowers that create vertical interest most spreading perennials cannot offer. The foliage is strongly aromatic, which is exactly why deer and rabbits treat it like it does not exist. They find the scent deeply unappealing. Some varieties reach 5 feet tall and nearly as wide. Others stay compact at 18 inches, perfect for edging along driveways and walkways. It spreads through gradual clump expansion and self-seeding, growing denser and wider each season without becoming invasive. Salvia is one of the great hummingbird plants, particularly red and bright pink varieties whose tubular flowers are shaped perfectly for a hummingbird's bill. Plant it near a window and you will have company all summer. Zones 4 through 10 covers most of the continental United States, from the Pacific coast to the humid southeast, handling heat and drought with zero complaint. One underappreciated quality of perennial salvia is its reliability in the difficult middle of summer. That stretch from July into August when the spring flush is gone but the fall garden has not yet started. Salvia keeps blooming through that lull without complaint, providing color precisely when a lot of other perennials are resting. In a well-designed border, it is the plant that fills the gap so the landscape never looks empty or tired. Plant it in May, and by midsummer it will be one of the hardest working things in your yard. Plant number 10. Rudbeckia, American Gold Rush. Rudbeckia. Zones 4 to 9. Full sun. Spreads by rhizomes and self-seeding. Most people think of Rudbeckia and Black-Eyed Susan as essentially the same plant. They are related, but American Gold Rush operates in a completely different category. This was the 2023 Perennial Plant of the Year, selected by hundreds of horticulture professionals across the United States. 3-inch golden yellow flowers with arching rays and a reddish halo around dark chocolate cones cover this plant from midsummer through the first frost. It does not just bloom, it erupts. The entire plant disappears under flowers. At 22 to 27 inches tall and up to 40 inches wide, it stays lower and spreads more densely than common Rudbeckia, making it more effective as a weed-suppressing, ground-covering spreader. It was bred specifically for disease resistance, solving the traditional weakness of the Rudbeckia family in humid climates. Plant 3 together this May, and by year 3 you have a solid unbroken wave of gold from midsummer to November. A color display that looks like it costs thousands and requires almost nothing to sustain. What truly separates American Gold Rush from the standard Rudbeckia you find in every big box store is what it does to a landscape photographically. On a bright fall afternoon when the light is golden and the seed heads of other perennials are browning out, a mass planting of American Gold Rush is the kind of thing that people stop to take pictures of. If your goal is a front yard that generates genuine envy from the street, not just a pleasant garden but one that makes people do a double take, this is one of the most efficient ways to achieve it. Plant number 11. Blunt Mountain Mint. Pygnanthemum. Muticum. Zones 4 to 8. Full sun to part shade. Spreads by rhizomes. Here it is, the one promised at the beginning. The 2025 Perennial Plant of the Year, chosen by hundreds of horticulture professionals across the United States, and the plant most gardeners have never heard of, never considered, and cannot stop talking about once they finally discover it. Blunt Mountain Mint, and it is about to change how you think about what a perennial can do. First, the visual. At the height of summer, the bracts beneath the small white flower clusters develop a silver frosted appearance, as if the entire plant has been lightly dusted with something that catches and reflects sunlight. From a distance, it looks like a shimmer, something between a flower and a frost. There is genuinely nothing else in the garden that produces this effect. Beneath the surface, it spreads steadily by rhizomes, building denser and wider colonies each season. 2 to 3 feet tall, it thrives in full sun to partial shade and in moist soil with good drainage, meaning it works in spots that defeat most other spreaders. Rain gardens, low spots, damp borders where drainage is poor. And the wildlife response is extraordinary. Pollinators, butterflies especially, find mountain mint completely irresistible. The small flowers are packed with accessible nectar that an enormous variety of beneficial insects can reach, making this one of the most ecologically valuable plants you can add to a U.S. landscape. Native to the eastern United States, deer-resistant, and essentially maintenance-free. This is the 2025 plant that most gardeners are not planting yet. Get ahead of it. Put it in the ground this May. In 3 years, every single person who visits your yard is going to stop and ask what that incredible silver-frosted plant is. Bonus plants. 3 more worth knowing. These 3 did not make the main list for one reason only: they are more specialized. But for the right yard, they are just as powerful as anything above. Bonus number 1. Goldenrod, Solidago. Every fall, goldenrod turns roadsides and meadows across the United States into rivers of gold in the toughest conditions imaginable. Poor soil, full sun, no irrigation. It spreads by rhizomes and self-seeding, naturalizing effortlessly across large open spaces. Late-season pollinators depend on it heavily when most other flowers have finished their show. deer-resistant, drought-tolerant, and hardy across zones 3 through 9. The perfect season extender that carries your landscape all the way to the first hard frost and makes the most of every last warm day. Bonus number 2, hardy geranium/cranesbill geranium. This is the solution for every shaded corner that nothing else will touch. Hardy geranium, the true perennial cranesbill, not the tender annual in a pot, spreads steadily in part to full shade, producing delicate flowers in pink, blue, and purple from spring through fall, while forming a dense, weed-suppressing mat in spots where most fast spreaders refuse to grow. Hardy in zones 3 through 8, deer-resistant and almost completely maintenance-free once established. If shade is the problem in your landscape, this is the answer you have been looking for. Bonus number 3, creeping jenny, Lysimachia numularia. This one moves faster than almost anything on this list. Creeping jenny spreads by long trailing stems that root wherever they contact soil, creating a bright chartreuse carpet that flows across the ground like a slow green river. It handles sun or shade equally well and is particularly powerful in wet, poorly draining spots that defeat other spreaders. Stream edges, low spots, areas around water features where most plants rot. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. This is your fast fix plant for bare, difficult ground that you want covered quickly, permanently, and beautifully. Before we close out, drop your USDA hardiness zone in the comments right now. Zone 5, Zone 8, Zone 3 with brutal winters. Tell me which zone you are gardening in and which plant from this list you are putting in the ground first this May. I read every single comment. And if you already have one of these plants, if creeping phlox is already carpeting your slope or bee balm has already taken over a corner of your garden, share that story too. Tell me how fast it spread, what surprised you. That real-world experience is what helps every other gardener watching this video right now make the right call for their own yard. 11 fast-spreading perennials, 1 smart May planting window, and a landscape that gets richer, fuller, and more beautiful every single year without you starting over from scratch. That is the difference between annuals and perennials. And now you know exactly which ones to choose and exactly why they work. If this video saved you even one wasted trip to the garden center this season, 1 cart of annuals you did not buy, 1 year you did not repeat, hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second and it helps other gardeners find this video when they need it most. Subscribe to Evergrow Garden if you are not already here. Next week we are covering the 9 perennials that bloom from spring all the way through the very first frost, non-stop color, zone by zone for every US region. That one is going to be just as valuable as this one. I will see you there.